Welcome to Sounds of Sud. I'm your host, Jasmine. This podcast is for all the music lovers and anyone that wants to learn more about working in the music industry. Bringing you interesting insights and wild stories from DJs to festival organisers, we talk to all of the people behind the scenes that make the magic happen. So make sure to hit subscribe and I'll see you on the dance floor. Hello Cameron, welcome to Sounds of Sud, the podcast. How are you?
Hi, I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
Good, thank you so much for coming over here. How's your day been?
Yeah, not too bad, pretty busy. I was working on Rave Reviewz today, doing a bit of writing as well. So.
Perfect. So that leads me nicely into an introduction. So I invited you over here because you are the founder and writer behind Rave Reviewz.
So yeah, I guess I'm the founder and I kind of hate using the term because it sounds a lot grander than it really is, but I suppose I'm the CEO of Rave Reviewz as well.
That's so cool. So to those who don't know, as I know it, I'm sure there's more to it, which we'll get you to lead into in due course, but Rave Reviewz is a Instagram account that is like a source of truth for what's going on. You basically, as the name in the title, you review raves, you're always out and about, going to there. What's the main purpose of it?
Well, so I guess when I initially launched Rave Reviewz, it was actually a review site. So, you know, like TripAdvisor, where you've got people list their restaurants and hotels and then others leave reviews to sort of let you know how it was. So I thought it'd be helpful to have something like that for nightlife. So initially that's the form that it took. So it was actually a website where people would leave reviews. And we ran that model for about 6 months. And then I realized that people weren't really leaving reviews. So the promoters were all listing their events and, you know, people using it to look for events, but no one was leaving reviews. I realized that that's because after a rave, everyone's hungover or generally worse for wear and they don't want to write an essay. They're just sort of, you know, trying to survive the day. So we turned it into more of an online music magazine and we were doing a lot of articles and interviews. That was quite hard to monetize. So eventually we moved everything to social media and video content, and that's the form that it still takes. So people use it to, I guess, you know, check content from recent Sydney parties, and we do a lot of event information to let people know what's going on. Yeah.
Wow. So do you still have the website or it's just the social media now?
Now it's just the social media. So we had the original website, which was, you know, which took ages to make and cost a lot more than it should have, which was the one where people could leave reviews. So it had a lot of functions. And then we then had a different website for the articles and the online magazine. But we don't really use that now either. It's all just online because I guess on social media, because everyone's already on social media, you know, so
it's not an extra step.
Yeah, it's a lot easier for people to just stay on there on Instagram and Facebook and find out what's going on that way.
Wow, that's so interesting. So when you say social media, I know it through Instagram, although I did see something commented on Facebook the other day from a page. So what's your main forms of social media that you use it for?
So we mainly use Instagram. I think that's our primary focus now. We're still very active on Facebook as well. We haven't got around to TikTok yet, but that is on the agenda at some point. When we find the time, we're going to launch a TikTok page. In fact, I correct myself, we do have a TikTok page, but it's not very active.
Don't use it yet.
Yeah, we haven't actually used it yet. We've just got the name and ready to go one day.
I've been trying, everyone keeps telling me I need to do it with this, but it's hard enough because they're not connected, like Instagram and TikTok, because they're different owners,
right? And
so you can't just press play and go bang 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 and it go everywhere. It's like it's so time consuming. So time consuming. So has there anyone been involved with you on the journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So initially I guess, you know, I started this when I moved to Sydney, and just to give you the context, so I first visited Sydney in 2011 and I had this wild weekend here, went out loads, had a really good time. And then I moved here in 2014, which was 6 months after the lockout laws. So I don't know if you recall the lockout laws. Basically, until I think just before the pandemic, they were in place where people they couldn't go into a venue after 1 a.m. and there were lots of rules around the drinks that could be served and all that sort of thing. Like Sydney nightlife was dead in comparison to how I remembered it when I visited. So when I told a mate of mine about it, he was really into the idea, and so we set it up as a company together. And we were sort of working on it for probably a couple of years. But he actually had to pull out just before we launched because his wife was expecting and he was sort of finding it difficult to juggle work plus family life plus this.
Fair enough.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't hold it against him. We're still good mates. So I just sort of launched the social media channels and then started to build a team through that. And over the years, lots of different people have been involved. I guess so now my business partner is Sean McDonald. So he was one of the first people to get involved and he's kind of been, you know, with me for the journey ever since. And so he sort of made him a partner in the brand, I think it was about a year ago now.
Okay.
So yeah, I guess it's us two. And then we have other people who are involved who help us.
That's so interesting. That's so much bigger than I thought it was. I knew this was going to be a really interesting conversation. I'm like, that's super interesting. So you started it back in 2014, like 10 years ago.
Yeah, so I guess we actually launched in, I think it was 2017.
Okay.
So I guess the first conversation I had about it, so I moved here in 2014. First time I told my mate was probably about a year after I'd arrived. So yeah, I first told him about it in 2015 and I think we probably set it up as a company in 2016. And then I think we launched, like I think it was either 2017 or thereabouts.
Yeah, so it's been around for a long time then. And where did you move from, did you say?
So I'm from London, so I lived there all my life until I moved to Sydney.
What, so you came to Australia for a weekend?
Well, no, I was travelling through, but I spent a weekend in Sydney, yeah. So I think I was in Australia for 2 weeks altogether and then Thailand for 2 weeks. So yeah, it was a bit of a whistle-stop tour.
Yeah, enough to make you want to move here. I love it. And then you come here.
Yeah, funnily enough, I mean, it was mainly that I just wanted to try and live somewhere else for a little while. So I wasn't actually kind of set on moving to Australia. I was just narrowing it down to the places where I could work relatively easily. And so I guess my main job is I'm a psychiatrist. So you have to be able to speak the language to do that job. So that narrowed it down to English-speaking countries. And Australia is relatively easy to move to as a doctor. Like they recognise the qualifications and that kind of thing. So yeah, and I had friends in Sydney, so that's how I narrowed it down to Sydney. And then I moved here, and then that's when I realised that the lockout laws were in place, and I was like, what have I done?
Yeah,
but,
the nightlife sucks.
Yeah, but then over time, I mean, I guess that was probably one of the reasons I started Rave Reviewz is because especially back then, it was pretty difficult to find where the good parties were, you know, because they were few and far between, because nightlife had really been affected by the lockout laws, and, you know, that's still the case now. I think nightlife's still recovering.
100%. There's been a really common theme. Obviously, most of the people I'm speaking to are in Sydney. And some people have lived elsewhere, but the common theme is like it's getting better, but sometimes it's harder to undo damage than if it was just shit in the first place. Do you know what I mean? Yeah,
absolutely. I think so. Obviously, we had the lockout laws, and then we went straight into lockdown, which affected nightlife massively, and a lot of businesses have closed down. So now, you know, things are sort of starting to recover, but there's a long way to go.
But then you have the economy in general, which is like so many moving parts for the whole thing. I think it will bounce back. I think there's an appetite for it. But someone said on here recently, which I thought was really interesting, and it was Jess, House of Low Key. She's a DJ in London. She was saying that she thinks it's like a generational thing because these people miss the whatever they are, like 22, 23-year-olds now who are going out and would be going to raves and stuff because they spent their 18, you know, exploring kind of years in lockdown. It's taking them a while. They're still in like a different phase. And I just thought it was a really interesting perspective. It took me a few years to get into my raving era, would you say?
Right, okay.
So it's like they're still in that, just going out kind of thing.
No, I think you're right. I'm sure that, you know, lockdowns and the pandemic has affected raver behaviour, right? Especially for that generation. Interestingly, I think, you know, that generation, there's like the rates of alcohol consumption are also dropping. So I think there is something that's changing there. But like you said, also, I mean, if you think about it, they're also the people that probably be most affected by cost of living, right? Like when you're at that age group, you're probably not earning as much, and so it's even harder to afford nights out. So
Unless you're living with your parents and you're not earning like a decent salary, you're absolutely fucked.
Yeah, absolutely. The UK as well. I mean, the economy in the UK has really been struggling. And then it sort of, definitely starts to affect, as well as nightlife in every city, festivals are, being cancelled left, right, and centre, which is another huge issue. So yeah,
it's all super interesting, especially for someone who writes about it. So okay, I have so many questions as usual. So let's wind it right back. So you've grown up in London.
Yeah, that's
right. Studied
So to become a psychiatrist, you have to study medicine. So I did a medical degree, and then I specialised in psychiatry.
Oh wow! So how long did you study for altogether?
So I guess it was 5 years of medicine plus a 1-year BSc. So 6 years of uni, and then you're training while you work. So another, well, I guess 1 year as an intern. So just, general medical intern, and then 6 years of like training in psychiatry while working. So
wow.
Yeah, it's quite a long time. You think about it.
So 12 years from when you started your education outside of school to being a fully qualified psychiatrist?
I think probably 13.
Holy shit.
Because 1 year of internship as well.
Wow.
When you're doing just like medicine, surgery, general practice. Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a lot. Yeah.
But I guess because you're working while you're training for a lot of it, so it kind of feels like you're just, you've got a job. Yeah. But you also have to do a bit of studying on the side.
And it's funny to think that after all that, you're not even completely satisfied with your career, and then you go down a whole other path, which is interesting.
Well, yeah, that is, so throughout my career, I've always been doing something alongside psychiatry that was a bit more creative. Like, initially I was really into films, and I was sort of making films, and I thought, right, I'm going to leave psychiatry and become a director. Yeah, that was my big plan.
Wow.
But then I made a few films, and then the last, so generally they were well received. The last one I made had sort of mixed reactions, put me off a little bit. And then I was really into writing, and I was sort of writing a lot of articles, and I wrote like a screenplay for a TV series, was developing that. So I was going to leave psychiatry and become a writer. Yeah, that was my next plan. And then I started Rave Reviewz, and then it was like, right, I'm going to leave psychiatry and become like a music sort of, exec. So I was always trying to leave psychiatry, but then at some point in the past, so we got investment for Rave Reviewz, right? I was going around pitching for investment at all these startup events. So we got investment, and then the investors were sort of saying, if you want more investment, you're going to have to leave psychiatry, right? Because no one's going to invest in a business like large amounts of money if the founder and CEO isn't full time,
Yeah.
So then I kind of really had to think about, okay, do I really want to leave psychiatry altogether? And then I realized, actually, I want to keep doing what I've been doing, which is doing psychiatry and also doing something more creative on the side. And I guess, because I get different things out of the two. So psychiatry, it's good because you're helping people. It's rewarding in that sense, but it is also quite emotionally taxing. Yeah,
I can imagine. Yeah, I can imagine.
Whereas with stuff like Rave Reviewz or writing or filmmaking, whatever, it's creative and fun, but it's also, I don't know, I feel like if I was doing that full time, I probably wouldn't feel like I'm doing enough to like make a difference.
If you were just doing the Rave Reviewz full time.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's completely valid. And I just want to take a minute to obviously acknowledge all of the horrendous stuff that happened over in Bondi this weekend. Absolutely. All those people that lost their lives, because I saw your article on the way over here. Do you want to?
Yes.
Sorry, not on the way over here. On my way home. Do you want to touch a little bit on what you shared today? Because I'll share it in the write up, because it's a good article.
Thanks. I guess just really tragic what happened in Bondi the other day, and I actually, the mental health centre where I work is here in Maroubra, and I cover all of the eastern suburbs, so that includes Bondi, so it's essentially in my catchment area. And it just got me thinking, first of all, it's really tragic that someone with mental illness has gone and done this, because, fortunately, our mental health services, they're not really properly resourced to help people with severe mental illness like this. We're sort of short-staffed, and they're not really adequate at all. So there's that aspect to it. Of course, it's terrible what's happened for people who've lost their lives and their families, but at the same time, we've got to be careful not to stigmatize people with severe mental illnesses like schizophrenia, because it's actually relatively rare for someone with a serious mental illness to do something like this. Having said that, when it does happen, the consequences are so awful and like tragic that really governments should be putting the right sort of funding in place to adequately resource services and prevent things like this from happening.
Do you think that there's going to be some sort of reaction from this by the government? Like, do you think that or
I'd like to think so. I mean, often politicians will sort of talk the talk. They'll say, oh yeah, we're going to fund mental health services loads and we've got all this money available, but you rarely see it on the ground. If you think about it, for healthcare professionals, who've had to work through the pandemic, that was difficult for them. And on top of that, cost of living crisis means that it's harder for them to earn a living. So certainly we're seeing a lot of people who used to work in the public mental health service have since left, and it's hard to fill vacancies. And then what happens is when you get to a critical point where too many people have left, it becomes unsustainable for everyone else because they're having to manage that extra workload. So yeah, it's a challenge, and I hope that the government sort of take notice and start funding services properly.
Extremely horrific and tragic for everyone involved, whether that was obviously first and foremost the victims, their loved ones, but all of the people that were there, like all the people that were just triggered from it. Like it just spans so far and wide. It's a pretty dark weekend in Sydney, I would say. I've never had something that. There was the hold up in the coffee shop.
In the cafe.
That was just before I came. And my ex-boyfriend was actually on his way here at the time.
Really? Yeah.
We went to Thailand. We were having a holiday. I was going back home to finish some exams, and he was on his way here. And that happened, and he was coming to Sydney, and his parents were just obviously freaking out. But since that, I don't recall anything as big as that happening. So it's pretty horrendous. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, I just wanted to take a minute to obviously acknowledge all of those people and reading your article. Obviously, send me that. So,
I guess just if I could just say on that, you're saying that it has so many wider implications as well. Like, so it's tragic for obviously people who lost their lives, their families, also people who would have been, around when that happened, who were involved in the incident, the survivors, the witnesses. So there's an increased risk of mental health problems in them. Even people who live close by, they can often be affected. And even people who can relate to the victims. So, tragically, one of the victims was a mother of a 9-month-old baby, right, who was also attacked. And
it's a miracle that baby wasn't dead at the scene, like the mother. I don't know, obviously, the details of it, but I'm just praying that they pull through. For their family's sake, at the very least. They've lost their wife, daughter, mother. I really, really hope that this baby is able to make it. I'm sure everyone's obviously feeling the exact same way. But sorry, carry on.
I guess so. Even people who could relate. So you could imagine young mothers would really feel for that situation, right? So they could also be at risk of mental health problems as a result of this. So the implications of something like this are massive.
Yeah, well,
and wide-reaching.
How are people gonna? Like, how are those poor workers of like Chanel, where obviously someone died in front of them? Like, how are they ever going to go back and work in that store? How are any of these retail workers going to feel comfortable going back in there? I know the likelihood of it happening again is extremely unlikely, but it'd be triggering, traumatizing. People, you can't unsee stuff. Like, I saw one guy had he'd got eye masks. He must have just taken them out of the shop that they were in, and they put them over their kids, so their kids, when they were walking out, didn't have to see anymore. And it's like, it's so fucked.
I saw that as well. We're actually all of this week, I'm not sure about next week, but certainly this week, so the mental health service where I work, so the Eastern Suburbs Mental Health Service, which is like the public sector for this area, are sort of providing support in Westfield, Bondi Junction. So we've got mental health professionals who'll be there on site this week for anyone who's been affected. But I guess that's like a drop in the ocean for what's required, really.
Yeah, and as we say, it's part of, like, this is the immediate problem and the immediate effects of it, but it's part of a way bigger problem. I wouldn't even just say in Australia, just the world in general, so it's extremely sad, which I suppose leads me on to the next point. So were you just good at writing, or did you just pick it up, or you just organically Like, where did that come from?
I guess with writing, I've always had this kind of urge to write. Like when I have a problem, I'll sort of write it down. And I used to write a lot of like stories and stuff when I was a kid. One of my earliest memories is writing this story. And this is going to sound really lame, but I'll tell you anyway. Yeah.
No
I
such
think
thing.
I was about 6 years old, I think, and I remember my mum came in and she was like, and I was crying in my room. She was like, "What are you crying for?" And I'd written a story and I was crying about it myself. I was like, man, I really, really moved by my own story. So,
What did she think of the story?
yeah, no, I think she liked it, but she was just like surprised, I guess. So, yeah, I guess I've been writing from a young age, but then I got writing about issues that I guess are important to me, um, related to mental health usually, or like, the intersection between mental health and politics, or mental health and social issues like racism, or mental health and like music policy, so I guess government policy about music festivals or drug testing, things that were important to me. I just started writing, and then I initially sent off a couple of articles to various newspapers and they published it, and it just went from there, really.
Is that how it works? Like, if I wanted to just try my hand at writing, which I definitely won't, because writing up the
Why not?
writing up the bios for these podcasts is hard enough. Because I'm like, it doesn't. Mine is like the language and the grammar. It's like, I'm obviously not an idiot. I can write it up, but have I got the natural flair for it? No, I don't think so. But is that what you do? Say I did want to do that.
Yeah.
I just email it to someone and say, what do you think?
Pretty much. So usually most outlets, they'll have like an opinion section. So Sydney Morning Herald, like I've written for them a little bit, or Guardian, which is where I mainly write, they'll have like an opinion section, and you can just send an email to their opinion editor, which you can find the emails online, and then they'll usually they don't get back to you. But then I guess once you've started writing a little bit, then they're more likely to consider what you've written. So like anything, I think it's just a case of starting. And you're saying that, the language and the grammar, you're not sure if you've got that. Really, that's not what it's about. It's more about whether or not you've got something to say, which I guess will resonate with other people, and perspective on things. I guess I imagine the reason why they publish my stuff is because I'm writing as a psychiatrist. So, if you've got like a specific perspective on something, and an area of expertise, then I think that's what counts, as opposed to the language and grammar. So you should give it a go.
Yeah.
Well, I can't wait to read your first opinion piece.
It's funny because it's like, I don't need to get it proved by anyone. I just started my podcast. In my opinion,
it's awesome that you started this, right? And that's how it goes. You just start and then figure it out as you go along. So
yeah, literally, it's been like, I hate to sound like a stuck record, but yeah, it's challenging.
Of course,
but I must say, I was saying to my boyfriend the other day, when I spent ages fucking around doing this reel ages ago, like I'm talking days, like coming back to it, just could not do it. I was just like getting really frustrated, and now I'm banging them out in like a couple of hours, which still sounds like a long time.
No, but you're right. I mean,
in comparison,
for sure, you get better with practice, right? And it gets easier. Same with me. I'm sure, like the first article I ever wrote, it's actually an opinion piece on Trump and his mental health, because a lot of people, when he was running for president, were sort of saying he's mentally ill, he shouldn't be president. So I was basically writing about that, and that, I'm sure, took me like a week to really sort of tweak and finalise.
So do you think he has a mental illness?
It's a big topic, but I mean, strictly speaking, the answer is no, because he does have narcissistic personality traits.
Personality disorder rather than a mental illness.
And even in the article, I've stopped short of calling it a personality disorder, because I guess that's a formal diagnosis, whereas
if I said that, it would just be off the cuff, but if you said that as a psychiatrist, it could have repercussions.
Absolutely,
right?
You want to be cautious, if you're, especially as a psychiatrist, and for anyone, I think, of jumping to a conclusion of a diagnosis without doing a proper assessment. And also, so interestingly, with a personality disorder, one of the criteria is that they're not functioning in society like how they could be. And with Trump, it was hard to say that, because he was president of the US, right? That's like a pretty high, well, probably the most powerful position you could be in. So you could argue he's very functional in society. according to, I guess, mental illness criteria. But he's definitely got the traits. So I guess I was just talking about how his personality traits could be dangerous. And yeah, I suppose they were.
Yeah.
They were dangerous.
Interesting.
It ended in a real shit show.
Yeah, absolutely. He was the first ever president to be on trial yesterday, I think.
Yeah.
In the history of ever. So
yeah,
that's
absolutely.
a pretty...
Yeah. And, the whole January 6th attack, and then him being impeached twice, like loads of stuff that went down. Maybe we're in for it all again soon, like I'm sure.
Yeah.
There's a high chance of him being re-elected. But yeah, I guess what I was saying was that took me a long time to write, whereas this one that I wrote just the other day, I think I wrote it in a few hours on Sunday. So
wow, interesting.
Quicker, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, before we go down the President of America rabbit hole.
Yeah, that's a good entire.
Okay, back on topic.
Yeah,
very
sure.
interesting, and I'll pop the link to the article in because you never know, someone might be interested in reading it. I would. So, what percentage of your time would you say you are psychiatrist versus writer versus rave reviews?
So I do psychiatry 3 days a week. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then Rave Reviewz, I do 2 days a week, so Monday, Tuesday, Rave Reviewz days. And so I haven't been writing as much recently. This is the first one I've written in, like, I want to say maybe a year or two.
Okay.
But before, I guess, my writing would also be done on my Rave Reviewz days. So yeah, in recent times, it's kind of a 3-2 split with psychiatry and then a couple of days for Rave Reviewz.
So in terms of Rave Reviewz, like, because obviously I'm talking to you about it because I understand what it is, but for someone who's, potentially in England or Ireland, because that's where some of my valued listeners are, what is it? So we've obviously got what you said it was going to be previously, but in its current iteration, like when you say doing rave reviews, like making the posts, attending the events?
Yeah, so usually on those days, because I guess, so to answer your question of what is Rave Reviewz, I suppose it's an electronic music events platform for Sydney. Our goal is to sort of branch out to other cities, but at the moment it's just based in Sydney, and we do a lot of event information and video content around electronic music events. That's kind of what we do in a nutshell. So what that actually looks like is a lot of video content on social media and then event information. So we do like a weekly Fave Raves post, which is our top picks for the week. And then we'll do, promotion for promoters. So they'll kind of pay us to help promote their events. And on the days that I'm working on it, essentially I'll usually be going through video footage that myself and the team have got over the weekend, deciding what we're going to post for the week, because we'll post the video pretty much every day, apart from the day that we do our Fave Raves post.
Which is for the weekend coming up.
Which is for the weekend, coming up. And then also, I guess, speaking to promoters about promotion, like who wants promotion for the week, which will be, stories and posts through our channels to help spread the word. So there's two sides of it, really. It's the content and the promo.
Interesting. And when you say yourself and the team, how many people are involved with it with you?
So these days there are 5 of us. At various points in the past it's been different numbers. I think the largest was, at one point we had about 14 of us. That was when we were really going full throttle.
14 of you? Wow.
Yeah, but it's all kind of, very informal. So I guess team members would go out to parties and get videos for me. I'd get them into places for free so they could, help get the footage. And they'd do posts and that sort of thing. These days there's 5 of us, and so it's myself, Sean, and then Jack, Raf, and Rahul. So
what does everyone do? Obviously you don't need to go into huge amounts of detail, but you've got obviously yourself, who's running the show, and it's your brand, and then Sean.
Yeah, he's my business partner, sort of second in charge. He does a lot of the promo posts. So the way we kind of divide it up is I'll do, like I said, so I'll be deciding what the schedule looks like for the week and going through the video footage, and I'll post most of the videos, and then I'll let Sean know what the promo is for that coming week, and he'll do all the promotional posts, including the Fave Raves. which is a real, you know, all credit to him for that, because that's a nightmare to put together. It's like a collage of all the best events that weekend.
Wow.
And then the other guys, they'll basically be out, and whatever parties they're at, they'll be getting videos for us.
And then they have to do a certain amount in return for going?
It's mainly just getting the videos. So they'll get the videos for us, post stories, send us the videos after the weekend so that we can go through them and decide what to post.
Wow. So do they spend what's a typical night like for them? Are they literally venue hopping, or are they just going to a certain place?
It's sort of depends where they want to go, really. Like, I'm sort of, you know, not too kind of prescriptive about where people need to be. Wherever they're at, they'll just get us video footage. If I can sort them out with guest lists, you know, to help, you know, make that easier, then I will. So yeah, it's pretty sort of informal, really.
And do you take content from like strangers? Like, if I tag you, would you then reuse that as well?
Absolutely. So we often post on a weekend saying, tag us in your stories, and then people who are out and about might tag us and we'll reshare their stories. Yeah, so it is kind of a community thing. A lot of people who know about Rave Reviewz will be really helpful and just send us videos or tag us in stuff. I guess, yeah, and you know, we work very closely with promoters, so they'll also send us footage or be really kind of helpful with making sure we have access to get good footage, because I guess it benefits them as well. So
yeah, of course, it's all advertising at the end of the day,
absolutely.
isn't it? For sure.
Yeah.
And then you said that you had aspirations to do this beyond Sydney. Like, where would you like to do that?
So we've been talking for some time now about launching in Melbourne. I might have an extended period of leave coming up soon, long service leave. So I think one of the things I'd like to do is maybe try and do that this year, if possible, or at least lay the groundwork for it. So yeah, it'd be the same sort of thing there, but you know, I guess just managing it from here, where we try and get people to get us footage from Melbourne, and we'd also kind of be on top of what's going on in Melbourne and post what the best events are. And help promote the scene there as well.
Yeah, that's so cool. I feel like, yeah, Melbourne's just a different beast altogether.
It is, yeah.
I always have a good time when I go down there for the weekend. There's obviously a good scene down there. I couldn't see myself personally ever living there, but I think it's definitely got a lot to offer. And I think my experience in Melbourne is like a drop in the ocean compared to what it has. You know, every time I go there, I go out and go to various places, but to really explore it and understand it, it's like a whole different.
Oh yeah, totally.
Different
I think it's a much bigger like underground electronic music scene there, so it would take a bit more time to kind of wrap our heads around it. But yeah, I can relate to what you're saying about not wanting to live there. I think coming from the UK, like we both do, because the weather's quite similar there to how it is in the UK. So you know, when you're going to move all this way to the other side of the world, you kind of want to be near the beach and in the sun.
100%. Yeah,
I think that makes a big difference for us.
But yeah, there's so many people from England and Ireland and everywhere else in Melbourne. You know, it's like people like one or the other. You're either a Sydney person or a Melbourne person.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Guess, maybe they sort of prioritise because I think, you know, there is more nightlife there, and there is more culture there in terms of arts and whatever else, like more of a restaurant scene and all that sort of thing. So maybe they prefer that to the beaches and the sunshine.
Yeah, you can't have it all, right? Interesting. And then, so your main business partner, does he have a second? If you're only like essentially part time in the Rave Review space, would that mean that he would be also? So
he works full time, and he just kind of does stuff in and around that. So he might do a post in his lunch break, or like after work, he might do a quick post. But I guess that's why I'm doing the majority of the sort of going through everything and
the heavy lifting.
Yeah, doing the sort of promotional side of it, as in pitching for promo and then deciding on the schedule, and then I'll kind of let Sean know what he needs to post and post the rest myself.
What's the hardest part about running the page or pages?
The hardest part, good question. I guess, well, just finding the time to fit it all in. I think when you're doing more than one thing in life, especially if you're trying to do it seriously, then so the parts, the different parts, they add up to more than one. So although I'm doing 2 days of Rave Reviewz and 3 days of psychiatry and theory, that doesn't add up to one full-time job. It adds up to more because they always creep into each other. And, you know, I'll find myself sometimes in my lunch break, in fact, pretty much all the time in my lunch break when I'm at my psych job, doing some rave review stuff. And sometimes when I'm doing rave review stuff, I'll have work stuff to do. So just trying to be boundaried with that is difficult. Yeah, I think that's the trickiest thing, the time management.
Makes sense. I can relate for sure. I really liked what you said just then about the time and how, you know, 2 part-times don't make up 1 full-time, because it's so true.
Absolutely.
So true.
Yeah.
And then where would you say has been through your... So we said we started it properly 2017, then we had COVID.
We just had our 6th birthday, so yeah.
6th birthday, then you
in
lost
October, so our 7th will be in October this year.
Yeah. 6.5 years.
Yeah.
Lost a bit of time with that through COVID.
Oh, of course, yeah. That was a really tricky, obviously for the entire music industry, right? Like there were no raves to review, so things were super quiet then. And you know, I was saying that at one point we had quite a large team, so fairly soon after COVID hit, like we kind of disbanded the whole team and said, well, guys, you know, I think we're going to just put an end to this. And we would just post a little bit of third-party content just to keep things ticking along. And we also did like a series of like live streamed gigs. It's called Lockdown Live. So yeah, and we were kind of just doing what we could, but
for just anyone that wanted to do it, or like the live streaming.
So we'd get DJs a lineup of DJs in their own respective home addresses, DJing with a video cam, and we had like, I can't remember what the software was, but we would kind of stream it all through our social media channels. Wow. So it was like a live stream concert. There was a lot of that during
COVID. Yeah. So party girl, Bri, she said that she did that, and she said it was a fucking nightmare. She said it was really hard to manage and set up and everything. Never mind if you were doing it for multiple people in multiple places. Yeah. Was it difficult?
It was tricky. It wasn't too, I mean, I think running an actual event is a lot harder because you've got, you know, the real people on the ground. And so we've done a few events over the years with, mainly through our Music on My Mind initiative, which is all about kind of raising funds and awareness for mental health through music. So we'll do like a charity rave, and yeah, we've been doing that every year pretty much since the first year. Yeah, probably to answer your question, the other challenging thing I think is running the event every year. That's always the most time-consuming part of the calendar.
Wow, now I have 2 questions. The first one, I'll say them both because I've got bad memory, I forget what I'm going to say. The first one is, do you have any desire to get into the event management and hosting side of it yourself? And then the second point is, I would absolutely love to hear more about the music on your mind, because I've said don't want to get ahead of myself, but if I'm able to, you know, get somewhere substantial with the podcast, I would really like to do something good, more so for me around the homelessness side of things. Like, it's something that bothers me a lot. I've only worked in the city for a couple of years. Before that, I've always been out of it, and going to work every day and seeing these people and, like, you know, seeing them asleep there every single day for, you know, the last 2 years, the same people and different people, and they come and go, older, younger. Like, it really gets to me a lot. And other than financially giving them something, I don't know what I can do to help these people. And I'd really like to. There's a the name escapes me, but there's a guy that I'm friends with on LinkedIn, and he's got a foundation for homeless people, and he's like a real activist for it. So I'd love to know. I'm so curious to hear what you're going to say about Music on My Mind, because I would love to get to a point one day where I can do something to kind of give back and do something to help people.
No, of course, no, I think that's such an important area that you're talking about, homelessness. It's really sad to see when, you know, people are living in those conditions, and you know that it's often in front of buildings where there's like $1 million apartments, and some of them are empty, and you kind of think, you know, surely there's something better than this that could be done for people. But yeah, no, I think that would be great if you did do something on that with Music on My Mind. So I guess I'm trying to think if it was it's probably quite soon after we launched, because working in the music industry, I realized that there's sort of high rates of mental illness in the music industry, and it is very taxing when you're like, because it's so 24/7, you know. So, and especially for people who are involved in live music, a lot of late nights, and erratic sleep patterns, and you've got drugs and alcohol in your workplace. So if you're stressed, it's very easy to start using those as coping mechanisms. And then there's a real like lack of recognition for people. A lot of people are like working really hard but not really getting anywhere because that's the nature of the industry. So yeah, there's really high rates of mental illness. I think there was this survey that I saw a little while back done by Support Act, which is the charity that supports people working in the music industry. And it said something like, I think 27% of people in the music industry have depression, 29% have an anxiety disorder, and that they're both sort of more than double the rate of the general population.
Wow.
And then sadly, the one that was most shocking was, I think it was 59% of people in the music industry have had suicidal ideation. I think they were looking at a 1-year period, and that's, I think, 4 to 5 times the rate of the general population. Yeah, so it's a real at-risk population. So I thought it'd be good to do something to try and address that. And on the other hand, so music is really therapeutic. We use it in music therapy for our patients. People use it to help them cope with stress. There's all these like really positive aspects of music. So yeah, we launched this campaign, Music on My Mind, where we do like a rave where initially we would donate all the money to charity that we would make. Then over time, in recent years, it's been a proportion to make it more sustainable so we can carry on doing it. Because we were getting grants from City of Sydney to do it.
Okay.
And then there was a year or two where we didn't get any grants. So we realised actually we're too reliant on grants. So now we give a proportion to charity and then use the remainder to run the next gig.
Run the next one, yeah. Sure. Because there's obviously, regardless of profit, that, like you say, there's so much more that goes into it, like people's time and everything that often doesn't get captured because it's not a direct cost of it, because that's obviously so.
I suppose, the time, I mean, we don't really take anything for the time that is spent on it. We just cover the expenses, and then, anything that's left we'll kind of put towards the next year. So we've been doing that for a while now. I think we're coming up to about $50,000 that we've donated over the years.
Wow.
So that's been pretty good. And then we also do content to raise awareness of mental health related to music. So interviewing DJs about mental health. Yeah, one year I kind of had a go at, was working with some producers doing sort of therapy over house music, just to see if that would resonate with people. Probably the one that I enjoyed most was, so I'd interviewed Carl Cox a few times, and we took a bit of the audio from that and turned it into an animated film about anxiety, because he was talking about how he used to have anxiety really bad and how he copes with it. And so we turned that into an animated film. That was kind of cool, hoping that would resonate with people who...
Did it have a reaction?
Yeah, I mean, people were really positive about it online. Like, he shared it all through his channels, and so that was pretty cool. So that's the idea behind Music on My Mind, is to raise awareness for mental health in music, and to, I guess, raise money for charity as well. And it's also a bit of a bridge between my life as a psychiatrist and also like the music side of things. I remember when I was going around pitching for investment, I would always go, "Hi, I'm a psychiatrist. Anyway, here's this rave business that I've started." Yeah. And the investors would often say, "What's the connection between this and that?" So I suppose this does, bridge the gap a little bit and bring them together.
Back to the beginning, I'm so interested. How did you actually even get this idea off the ground? Because how did anyone take you seriously when you have no... Am I correct in saying you have no music industry experience? You're a psychiatrist, you've had this great idea and you've just gone for it.
I mean, I used to go to parties, and then, so I guess promoters in the music industry, they're very receptive to anything that helps spread the word. So I mean, I knew one promoter when I started it, so Ben Knott, who's a sort of a friend of mine from Blueprint, and I remember, so he was, I think, the first person that we interviewed for Rave Reviewz, and then from that, so DJs, and mainly DJs, were very sort of keen to be interviewed, right, by a magazine, because there wasn't, and still now there isn't much kind of media coverage for electronic music in Australia, although it's great news that so Mixmag Australia and New Zealand is launching soon with Kerry Wallace from Sash. So he's the licensee for that, which is going to be great for the music scene here. So yeah, to answer your question, when we started, I think it was the interviews that really got us off the ground, because everyone was interested in being interviewed by a music magazine. And then once I'd been doing Rave Reviewz for a while and I'd sort of got to know people, and, you know, people I think were very aware of the issues with mental health in the music industry, and so they were keen to support Music on My Mind. And me being a psychiatrist as well added a bit of credibility to that. You know, there's been some really kind of stark reminders of the issues of mental illness in music in Sydney. You know, there's the tragic death by suicide of Paul Strange. I don't know if you were here when that happened. That was probably a few years ago now. And he was like, you know, one of the biggest promoters in Sydney.
No, I didn't know anything about that. Who is he? Who was he? Sorry.
Yeah, he was, you know, probably one of the biggest promoters in Sydney. He would do these huge like raves at the Hordern Pavilion and the Greenwood. And he was a lovely guy as well. And so I guess he was having mental health problems. He actually, and I knew him a little bit, and he reached out to me. You know, he knew that I was a psychiatrist, and he was sort of telling me about the difficulties he was having. And so I kind of put him in touch with a psychologist, and he started seeing the psychologist, and I was checking in from time to time, and he was sort of doing a lot better. And then I sort of didn't hear from him for a while. And then, you know, really awful news that he, you know, sadly committed suicide. So it was like a real shock for the entire electronic music scene in Sydney. And I guess just really stressed the importance of trying to do more for mental health.
Yeah, that's awful. So thanks for sharing that, and it's obviously very sad to hear of this, Paul. I'd never heard that story before. So back to what you said a second ago, I obviously understand that a psychiatrist works in the mental health space, but I just noted that you said you referred him to a psychologist. Can you just tell me, because I don't know if it's me just being you know, an airhead, but what is the actual difference between a psychologist?
Oh, right, yeah. Well, so just to clarify, I didn't refer him, but I in the formal sense, but I kind of recommended one. Yeah, and I explained the sort of process for how to get one. So psychiatrist is a medical doctor. So we'll first do a medical degree and then specialize in psychiatry. And then we tend to sort of assess people, diagnose, and then work out the treatment, which might include prescribing medication. And psychologists will do a psychology degree, and then they can specialize in different types of psychology. So clinical psychology are the ones that would work with people with mental illnesses, or there's like sports psychology or organizational psychology. And the ones who would be doing clinical psychology, who we would work with, they would usually be doing like the therapy side of things.
Okay.
So
you're more, in the simplest terms, would you say your diagnosis and their treatment?
No, not quite. So, because we will do treatment in terms of medication.
Yeah.
I guess we usually, and there are lots of variations to this. So, you know, I don't want to upset any psychologists by kind of, you know, not fully explaining everything that they do, because it's such a broad thing.
I don't think they're in my demographic of listeners.
That's all right, then, because they were like bloody psychologists. No. They will, yeah, they'll mainly do therapy, yeah, and they could also do psychological testing, but the psychiatrists will do the assessment, the diagnosis, and then work out the treatment, and then also prescribe the medication and send them to a psychologist for therapy.
Right.
You see?
Yeah, got it. Interesting.
Yeah.
It's like, it's funny because I have all these different people here telling me about their different professions and their connections to music. And the psychiatrist part of your role was a bit of an afterthought for me. I obviously liked the page and followed you so that was my interest in speaking to you, because I thought, oh, this is interesting. Like, how does one get that started? And now it's it's interesting to hear obviously the bridge to psychiatry and mental health. It's all very interesting, you know.
Yeah, it's a random combination, isn't it? Though people sometimes go, what? Like.
But
so you're a psychiatrist and you run a rave startup, like rave business as well. But you know, I think you've got to do what you enjoy as well. Like I said, I get different things out of the two. So yeah, I like having a mix of something a bit more, I guess, you know, where you're helping people but it's a bit heavier, and then also something that's a bit more chilled and fun. So
yeah, it's funny. Well, that's Mixed Methods. She's an ICU nurse, and
I didn't know that. Wow,
yeah,
okay. Yeah,
listen to her episode. It's really good.
Yeah,
it's really good. It's a crazy.
Yeah, I know her, but I didn't know she was an ICU nurse.
Yeah,
interesting.
And mother of 3.
Okay, I definitely didn't know that either.
Shocking, huh? Yeah,
fantastic.
It's a good listen.
Good for her.
But she says in it, you know, she goes and helps people in her nurse job, but then she needs help from the trauma of that, and then DJing to people is her release. But then she's also making people happy. She's like, they just go hand in hand.
Yeah.
The most unlikely of professions, so it's a bit like I suppose.
Yeah. You're right. When you start to look into it and think about it, then although on the face of it they seem very like different and unconnected, but you know, like I was saying, there are so many connections between music and mental health, like the therapeutic side of it, and then also the mental illness problems in the music industry, and you know, just generally mental people use music to cope with just life, right? Like, and stress, and you know, general mental health issues like outside of actual music therapy that we do. So yeah.
So when you think about it, it makes perfect sense. Why?
Yeah. Once you think about it, yeah, absolutely.
So good. So outside of Sydney, have you been ever like taken somewhere as a guest to go and do a write up or a segment somewhere else?
Yeah. So I think, I mean, if I go to events overseas, whether it's back in the UK, so I visit usually every year, obviously apart from during the pandemic. And I go to a rave there, then I'll often get video footage, and we'll sort of post it with the hashtag Rave Reviewz on tour. And if people send us footage from overseas, then we'll share that as Rave Reviewz on tour. And we'll get other people to send us videos if, you know, we see on their stories that they're overseas at festivals, and any of the team, when they're overseas, they'll get video footage. So we do cover events in other countries sometimes. When I went to Melbourne last time, then I got in touch with one of the promoters I know there who runs Revolver, and was getting video footage there. I think it was Bontan who was playing. So yeah, that was, I guess, some overseas, or well, not even overseas, but out of state, interstate coverage. But yeah, no, we're mainly focused on Sydney. So
and what do the promoters want? Are they more concerned around the quality of the content, or just the exposure that it's gaining?
Well, I think it needs to be good quality, but then it's also getting them exposure. So, but really, I mean, the video content is more for the ravers, because they like to see videos of parties and DJs playing and how it was, and you know, I guess that's the real purpose behind it. But it, you know, a byproduct of that is it gives promoters exposure as well. So yeah, we kind of, I suppose, we think of our primary audience and the people that we're catering for as ravers rather than promoters. But we're kind of a platform and a tool to help promoters connect with ravers as well.
Yeah, because it's interesting, isn't it? Because while you might originally start it for that, it ends up serving a dual purpose, because naturally the more of a following you have, it's more of a platform that makes sense for the promoters to use. You know, they kind of go hand in hand.
Absolutely. Yeah,
it's interesting.
Kind of the video content attracts the audience, and then the audience attracts the promoters, I guess. So yeah, that's kind of how it works.
And and where would you be? Have you, outside of England and Australia, what festivals have you been to?
I've been to a lot of festivals over the years, I guess. I mean, my favourite festivals were Burning Man in America.
Yeah, I'm yet to go.
Yeah, that was awesome. It's kind of, probably the best experience of my life. So I went to that, I think it was 2013. And that was awesome. You meet so many kind of weird and wonderful characters there, and loads of like interesting things happen. I always remember there was this moment where I was dancing, so it's all in the desert, right? And there's a stage called Robot Heart, which, you know, often has really good DJs playing. it's like a bus with decks at the top. And I was just dancing and I felt something on my shoulder, and I kind of looked over. It was a condom still in the wrapper. Yeah, so luckily it wasn't used. Still in the wrapper. So I was like, "What the hell?" Someone's throwing a condom at me. So I tried like throwing it away, but it was attached to something. It was attached to a string, right? So I started pulling the string, and this guy comes up with a fishing rod. He comes all the way up to me and he's like, but I'm like, what? And he goes, I'm going to have to try again. I go, yeah, you are. I was like, what a great way to meet people. He's just throwing this condom into the audience and seeing who catches it and then going and talking to them.
Oh, what was he hoping it would, like a girl would
I mean, I suppose that would be his ideal outcome. But I think he was actually just using it as a funny way to meet people. There's a lot of that kind of quirky outfits, and everyone carries gifts, and you know, you're all sort of cycling around in the desert and everyone's wearing mad outfits, and there's like these sound cars which could be like the size of a double-decker bus, but it's a duck or a dragon. And yeah, it's just a really surreal experience. So yeah, and then that same guy, he was then like dancing next to me, and the DJ, it was Lee Burridge, he saw what he was doing and he was laughing, and I was like, I'll wave it up at him. And he extended it and he waved it up at Lee Burridge, and Lee Burridge catches the condom in his mouth. Then everyone in the crowd's just like, yeah. So that was pretty cool, but very weird, right? Like you're in the desert and all this is going down. So that's my favourite festival.
I would love to go.
Yeah.
You know, my problem is I love festivals so much. Every time I go, I'm like, oh, I would love to go back to that festival for the rest of my life. Like, I went to Miami Music Week last year. I would love, not that it's a festival, but I would love to go there again every year.
Yeah, it's awesome that I went to that once.
You've been there as well? Yeah, and it's like, I can't do that because I know as soon as I go to Burning Man, I'll be like, wow, I want to go again.
Really? Wow, that's interesting. I'm almost the opposite, where when I go to a festival once and I had a really good time, I kind of think, okay, I don't want to mess with that memory and I want to try something else.
Yeah, I do agree.
Yeah, then I'll go although having said that, some of the festivals here in Australia I've been to multiple times, like Return to Rio and Subsonic, and I've been back to them, I feel like 3 or 4 times each. But that's because they're the local ones, and they're relatively easy to get to.
It's just time, isn't it? Time, money, and all that kind of
it
stuff.
takes a lot of planning. There's like this one guy at Subsonic who I always remember, and he was like dancing at the river stage, and he had like a sunflower on his, like tied around his neck, and I was like chatting to him, and I was like, so what's the sunflower? And he goes, the sunflower's my mum. And I was like, right, what's your mum's name? And he goes, Mummy Wummy. He was obviously, let's say, stimulated, you know, and he high as a kite, and he was just just loving life and talking absolute nonsense.
Oh my god.
So yeah, that used to be a lot of fun.
What other festivals overseas have you been to?
I mean, I've been to quite a few, because I used to just kind of like, I was probably like a festival junkie, just going to all of them, like Exit in Serbia, Glastonbury a couple of times, and Sonar and Off Sonar in Barcelona. That was good.
Oh, I think my friend Nick went to one of those last year.
Yeah, that's really cool too. Well, Off Sonar's really good. It's a bit like WMC. So Miami Winter Music Conference I went to as well. That where it's like parties all around the city in like clubs or like random locations or on the beach.
Oh, so similar. And
it's similar to WMC.
Have you ever been to ADE?
Yes, I went to ADE as well. And yeah, that's similar too, although it's just clubs mainly, right? There's actually it's mainly just clubs for ADE, but in Off Sonar, so there was a party where Richie Hawtin, who's like a minimal techno DJ, was playing in a fruit market. That
Love it.
Cool. Yeah, there's like really like random spots. But yeah, those city festivals can be pretty cool, I think. I think probably my favourites after Burning Man, and then the next one was Exit in Serbia, which is really cool. It's in this fortress in Novi Sad in Serbia, it's like on a cliff overlooking the river Danube, and so it's a really cool setting. And the dance arena is like a cliff and then a valley and then a mountain, and the DJ's at the bottom of in the valley, and then everyone's just like up on the mountain, like all the way up, and goes through the night, see the sun come up. They're really good DJs playing there.
Yeah, I really want to. Obviously, you know, it makes me want to go back to the different ones, but I completely agree with what you're saying about going somewhere else and a new experience. And, you know, don't ruin the one you had, kind of thing. I want to go. I just want to go to festivals all over the world because they're all so unique, different crowds, different cultures, and I like what you said about the beautiful settings. Like for me, I love it partying when the sun comes up because who doesn't? It's a pretty cool feeling. It's not even about what I'm doing right now. It's about the fact that there's so many people here doing the exact same thing. It's like music is so powerful, you know.
Absolutely.
Which is, I guess, why we're both doing what we're doing.
Absolutely. You know, it's like a real passion, isn't it? It's like a force, music as well.
I listen to music. It's funny. I was actually laughing to myself this morning. I was listening to a song, and unfortunately, I can't put them at the end of the episodes anymore. But there was a song I was listening to on the bus, and it was like relative. I don't think it was a new song, but it was like I hadn't heard it for a while, and now I got it on my playlist, and it was making me think of a certain memory. And I was walking through the streets of the city this morning at, you know, 8:15 or whenever it is I get in there, and I was laughing to myself because I was, you know, the song triggers a memory, so then it was making me happy, and I was laughing, and I thought people are going to be looking at me like, who is this weirdo just walking down the street smiling and laughing to myself? But it was making me happy, you know.
Of course.
It's a proven thing to do.
You see people on public transport, like, you know, moving their head, bopping to the beats, right? So yeah, for sure. I think it's I'm actually planning to do like a research study on like people using electronic music to help them cope with their like mental health challenges. Me and one of the junior, like, so I'm going to be supervising one of the junior doctors at the hospital who's going to be doing.
Oh, so this is a work thing.
I guess, it's another one of those things that falls into the in between
those
the two.
Brackets, But officially, it would be under
officially it'd be a work thing. But
that's
it'll feed into, you know, what we do through Rave Reviewz. Might even use Rave Reviewz to recruit the patients. So, well, they wouldn't be patients. Sorry, they'd be participants.
They might be patients after
they might be. They would be. But just not patients of mine.
And do you have any goals for like the year or long term? Any big milestones you want to hit?
Also, I guess it would be nice to launch in Melbourne or another city at some point soon, whether that's this year or the year after. I'm wanting to do a bit more writing. You know, like I said, I sort of published a piece today, so that's kind of whet my appetite a bit to start doing more writing. I think we're going to do Music on My Mind again. We were talking about maybe doing a series of events soon, so maybe in slightly kind of off the grid locations. But like a series of events through Rave Reviewz, collaborating with different promoters. That's something on the agenda that we're considering.
That sounds fun.
That's the sort of stuff that we're talking about at the moment.
I love that. Like, as I said before, going to raves in different settings, just like, because it's, you know, music, going through your ears is just a small part of it. It's the whole experience, right? So it's like, you know, what you see, what you smell, what you do, like, they all come together as one. So I'm all for it. I'll be
it's like a kind of a sensory experience, isn't it? All in.
Exactly.
It's not just hearing the music. And that's one of the things about festivals is that, so there's some research about why festivals are good for your mental health as well. And as well as the music being therapeutic in itself, right? Like the music that you hear is good for you and it helps like lift your mood. The festival atmosphere is, you know, like also good for your mood, as is the socializing that you do. You know, because you go with friends and you build connections, you meet new people. Like, you know, I've got close friends that I met at festivals. And then also it gives you like an opportunity to reflect on your life from a distance, which is thought to be quite a powerful kind of positive aspect as well. And, you know, I've sometimes had revelations at festivals as well. Like, you know, you kind of think about your life in this environment that's actually good for your brain chemistry. And so you have like different perspectives or new outlooks on things.
I feel like that's so nice to hear from a professional, because I feel the exact same way. I'm like, what do I know? You know, so it's interesting.
Well, you do know, because you've experienced that, right? Is what you're saying, and the research says the same similar thing, that it's, you know, it has all these positive, which is why, you know, it's a shame that I guess there are all these rules and restrictions that cause problems for festival organisers. You know,
100%.
So because, you know, there should be kind of more in place to support them, and all the cancellations lately with, you know, part of the problem is, you know, the government makes festival organisers pay to have extra police present.
Yeah.
So that ends up being a big cost for them. So
really expensive, I've heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that, you know, is a major issue in why you need a lot of ticket sales to cover your costs, and that's why festivals are getting cancelled, right?
Yeah, 100%. But back to what you said, I've met, the whole reason I started this podcast was because I had such a good time at Return to Rio, and I met so many people. Every single person that's come on has got some sort of connection, apart from a couple of people overseas, back to Return to Rio, and I've made like friends for life there. I felt like I'd known them forever when I'd just been there for 24 hours. It's a whole, I couldn't agree with everything you said more than. It's interesting, and it's great to know that there's actual, I've never done research on it because I haven't really had a reason to, because I'm just like, yeah, that's my diagnosis of why I go.
Of course.
And I try and get all of my friends. I'm like, even if you just come once, please just come to a festival with me, because you'll have so much fun. I should promise you have a good time. And since listening to the podcast, they're like, okay, it sounds pretty fun. We'll give it a go. And they didn't regret it. So it's good.
That's fantastic.
It's good.
Yeah, Return to Rio is great. And Subsonic's really good too, if you get a chance to go to that.
Oh, I would go to them all. You don't have to ask me twice. I'll be there with bells and whistles.
It's a little bit further. It's about 3.5 hours from Sydney, but it's fantastic. It was their first year back this, like, last December, since COVID and the bushfires and all of that. And it was,
it was awesome.
Brilliant return,
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Cool.
And then I must say as well, I just love to acknowledge the fact that you've spent 12 years studying medicine, and then you've also launched a business. So that's very very impressive, and you've obviously got a knack for both of the things that you're doing.
Doesn't feel like that all the time, but you know, I think that's part of it, right? You just kind of do what you can and hope for the best, and you know, you kind of like take small steps, and then when you look back on it, you think, actually, wow, you've come pretty far. We were talking about Paul Strange earlier, actually, and, you know, sadly passed away. And I always remember some advice that he gave me. So it was just after we'd gotten investment for Rave Reviewz, and we were at this event. I can't remember which one it was. It was at the Horden Pavilion, and we were kind of backstage talking, and he was like congratulating me on the investment, and I was saying, yeah, but mate, you know, it feels like so much hard work, and it's just like constant like struggle. And he said, yeah, but always remember, nothing worth doing comes easy, you know, so
otherwise everyone would be doing it.
So and that kind of stuck with me, and I thought, yeah, you know, it's bound to be challenging if it's something worthwhile. So
well, that's nice. Thank you for passing that on, because honestly, sometimes I need to hear it. Like, some days I get myself really, and I think that's natural probably with anyone trying to do something for themselves. Every now and again, I'm like, fuck this is way too hard. I haven't got the time nor the headspace. Like, it's really consumes a lot of energy.
Absolutely, yeah.
But then when you do, like, for example, the first while obviously takes a while to get a following, whereas now within like 24 hours of releasing, I had like 50 listens to a podcast the other day.
That's awesome.
And I was like, I don't know if that's a lot or not a lot, but to me it feels like a lot, because in the beginning, obviously, it took a while to get to that point, whereas within 24 hours to get to like 50 listens, I was like, that means that people are like, have it their bell on or whatever, they must you know, hear it straight away. So I was like, I'm proud of that, and you know, hopefully one day it'll be, but I don't even really care if it's more, you know, I'm enjoying doing it.
That's it, is you've got to be enjoying the process for it to, you know, to be able to stick with it. So, and if you know, you start something which you're not really enjoying it, then generally it doesn't continue, right? So, but you know, you just, if you're enjoying it, just keep going, and then, you know, maybe it'll like reach the next level. Even if it doesn't matter if you're enjoying it.
Exactly. I thought, if anything, you know, when I'm old and I've got dementia or something one day, I can listen back to this stuff, because it's like, if you're listening back to your own voice and telling actual stories of that stuff that, let's face it, I've probably forgotten, because whilst it's supposed to obviously mostly be you talking, naturally I would intervene,
of course,
you know, have my say.
Yeah.
I've been really struggling. I was hoping that there was some sort of AI to tell me like the balance of the voices, because I'm like, it should be you know, less of a percentage of me and more you, and I'm like, but I don't know if that exists, but I
don't know. But I mean, I think it just, you know, whatever feels natural, and I think you're doing great. Like,
well, thank you.
You know, generally it sounds like feels like you're interested in what I'm saying, but you're also adding your own experiences, which helps, you know, build a conversation, right? Otherwise,
otherwise
it feels too one-sided,
too sterile. But that's what I was saying before you
Yeah.
came over today. I haven't really been nervous to talk to anyone, but I was like,
Oh, really?
Jesus.
Oh,
I was
man.
like, I feel
I
like
hope I haven't like scared you for some reason.
no, it's just because, as I said, I knew the Rave Reviewz part of it, but I hadn't really digged too deep. And then I said Psychiatrist, and then I was like, and then before you'd even sent me a couple of things over to read, I'd already got to that point, and I thought, I said, fucking hell, am I a bit out of my depth here? I'm trying to interview a journalist.
Because the thing is, ultimately, do you know what is the leveler is that we're all ravers. That's what you know, is the common factor, and that's one of the great things about the rave scene, festivals, like music events, is when you go there on the dance floor, everyone's sort of equal, right? Like, it doesn't matter what you do or where you're from. Like, you meet people from all walks of life at festivals and music events, and you know that really isn't what's important. If you're into the music and you're there to have a good time, and you know you're not a dickhead, that's all that matters, right? It's very accepting, and you know I think a lot of people also really appreciate that aspect of like the rave community, is the like sense of belonging, like
100%.
you feel part of something, you know. So
especially when, like, if it's one thing in meeting someone in the festival environment, if you meet someone on the dance floor, you have a very, very common interest, and it's that exact artist or that moment. If they're having a good time, you're having a good time. You could be like whole different walks of life, and I've met some of the most weird, wonderful, interesting people ever at festivals. It's incredible. Well, thank you. Do you have anything else you want to touch on before we wrap it up?
No, not really. Just on that final thing you're saying, so the junior doctor who I was going to supervise in that study, I bumped into her at a rave after I was actually her boss for like 6 months. Then we were both at a rave, and I bumped into her there. We got chatting. Then I saw her again at Subsonic Festival. Like we were actually in a group all talking for a bit before we realized who each other were.
Because you were dressed up, or
yeah, pretty much. And then, but you know, I think it's nice that you know you can meet people. I can meet people who I've worked with, but also people who I would, you know, otherwise never have crossed paths with. So, yeah, it is nice. But no, thank you for the chat. Really appreciate it.
Oh no, well, thank you so much for giving me the time, and like super interesting. How you can make it being a psychiatrist and a rave reviewer work.
Well, or try to, yeah.
Yeah, but I honestly didn't expect those things to ever, like, I knew we were going to touch on both, but I was not expecting them to actually have a connection. You know,
no, you don't until you really think about it, which is what I found. But yeah, no, it feels like they're not too. It doesn't feel too disconnected anymore.
No, it's like if there's even any one common ground, you can make it work. So thank you for sharing it with me. It was very interesting. It's lovely to chat to you.
Thank you. Cheers.